A 5-year-old child was found alive in the center of a room completely destroyed by flames. In her hands, she held something that would make even the most skeptical firefighter cry. What happened on that night of November 15th would become known as the miracle of the Virgin Mary. But before we continue, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I would love to see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary are reaching. Robert Hayes has served as a firefighter for 22 years in Texas. For more than 2 decades, he has seen it all: residential fires, industrial explosions, chemical accidents. Robert is known in the department for one thing: absolute composure. While other firefighters panic, he analyzes. While others pray, he calculates. He has never been religious, even though he has been married for 18 years to Linda, a practicing Catholic. She takes their 2 children, Michael and Sarah, to Mass every Sunday. Robert rarely goes. For him, the world operates through physical laws. Miracles are coincidences that science has not yet fully explained. At least, that's what he believed. That Tuesday, November 15th, Robert started his shift at 6 p.m., just as always. The day had been calm. A gas leak in the morning, a small traffic accident in the afternoon. Nothing that suggested this would be the night that changed everything. On the other side of town, Jennifer Wilson was preparing for another night shift at the hospital. Jennifer has been a nurse for 8 years and is a single mother of a 5-year-old girl named Lily. The divorce was finalized 2 years ago, and since then Jennifer has been balancing her career with motherhood on her own. The house where they live is modest. 2 floors, 3 bedrooms. Lily's room is on the 2nd floor, decorated with princesses and unicorns. Jennifer chose this house because it was close to both the hospital and Lily's school. But working the night shift means Jennifer needs help, and that's where Margaret Thompson comes in. Margaret is 68 years old and has worked as a nanny for more than 30 years. She has been a widow for 12 years, never had children of her own, but dedicated her life to caring for other people's children. Margaret is a devoted Catholic. Jennifer met Margaret through the church 2 years ago, right after the divorce. The priest made the recommendation, saying that Margaret would be perfect to help a struggling single mother, and he was right. Margaret takes care of Lily 3 nights a week. She arrives at 6:30 p.m. and stays until Jennifer comes back from the hospital, usually around 7 in the morning. During that time, she serves dinner, helps with homework, supervises the bath, and puts Lily to bed. Lily loves Margaret. She calls the nanny Grandma Maggie, and Margaret treats Lily as if she were her own granddaughter. They have traditions. They watch specific cartoons together. They read bedtime stories. Margaret always carries a small bag with her. Inside are her reading glasses, a Bible, some medicine, and a rosary she received as a gift years ago from a family she once worked for. That rosary has a special meaning for Margaret. She uses it in her daily prayers without fail. Jennifer never minded Margaret's religiosity. In fact, she often told her friends that Margaret was a positive influence on Lily. The nanny taught values such as kindness and patience. That Tuesday began like any other. Jennifer prepared a quick snack before leaving, left the usual instructions for Margaret. Lily was excited because she had learned a new song at school and wanted to sing it for Grandma Maggie. Jennifer left at exactly 7 p.m. She kissed Lily, thanked Margaret, and headed for the hospital. None of them had the slightest premonition that this would be a different night. Margaret prepared Lily's favorite dinner, pasta with tomato sauce and meatballs. During dinner, Lily talked about her school day, as lively as always, the games at recess, her friends, the activities. After dinner, they settled in the living room to watch cartoons. Margaret took the opportunity to knit a blanket she was making to donate to the church. It was always a peaceful moment, a smooth transition between day and night. At 8:30 p.m., it was bath time. Margaret supervised while Lily washed and brushed her teeth. The girl was independent for her age, but still needed help with some things. After the bath, Lily put on her colorful unicorn pajamas, and they went upstairs to her bedroom. Lily's bedroom on the second floor was cozy, light pink walls, a small canopy bed. On the nightstand, there was always a glass of water and a lamp shaped like a crescent moon. Margaret always followed the same routine, first choosing a book. That night, Lily picked a story about a princess who helped animals in the forest. Margaret read patiently, making different voices for each character. After the story, Margaret always spent a few minutes asking Lily how she felt, if there was anything worrying her. It was an important moment when Lily could express any feeling. While they were talking, Margaret took the rosary out of her bag to say her silent prayers, just as she always did. Lily, curious, asked about it. Margaret briefly explained that it was something used to pray, to talk to the Virgin Mary, and to ask for protection for the people we love. Lily showed genuine interest. Margaret displayed some rosary beads and explained in simple terms how it worked. It was a natural, spontaneous moment. After the brief conversation, Margaret placed the rosary on the nightstand. Lily fell asleep peacefully, holding her teddy bear. Margaret adjusted the blankets and went downstairs to the living room, where she would spend the rest of the night watching television while waiting for Jennifer. Margaret settled into her favorite armchair and turned on the TV to a soap opera channel. She continued knitting the little blanket, a relaxing activity to pass the long hours of the night. From time to time, she checked the clock and listened carefully to the sounds of the house, always attentive in case Lily needed something. Around 10:20 p.m., Margaret began to notice a strange smell. At first, she thought it came from outside. Perhaps a neighbor making a bonfire, something burning in a nearby house. But the smell was growing stronger, and it seemed to come from inside the house itself. Margaret turned off the TV and paid closer attention. The smell was unlike anything she had ever encountered. It was not cigarette smoke or fireplace smoke. It was something more chemical, more alarming. She stood up and began to walk through the house, trying to find the source. Her first instinct was to check the kitchen, thinking perhaps she had left something on the stove. But everything was normal, turned off. As she moved, she realized the odor was stronger near the stairs leading to the second floor. With a growing sense of fear, Margaret decided to go upstairs. When she reached the top, the smell was significantly stronger. There was a faint haze in the air, thin smoke forming in the hallway. Margaret immediately knew that something was very wrong. She tried to head toward Lily's room, but the smoke was becoming denser with each passing second. Margaret could feel the heat increasing in the hallway. Her eyes began to water, and she started coughing. She covered her nose and mouth with her sleeve and tried to keep going, but it quickly became clear that it would be impossible to reach the room. The smoke was impairing her vision, and she was starting to have trouble breathing. With her heart racing, Margaret shouted Lily's name several times, but there was no response, only the threatening sound of something crackling, burning somewhere on the second floor. Margaret then faced the most difficult decision of her life. She could not reach Lily on her own. She had to go down and call the fire department. As she rushed downstairs, she kept shouting instructions to Lily, hoping the girl could hear her, but the smoke and the noise made any communication impossible. Margaret ran to the phone in the kitchen. With trembling hands, she called the fire department. The operator answered immediately. "Please, come quickly. There's a fire, and a 5-year-old child is trapped on the second floor. I can't reach her." The operator asked the routine questions: exact address, the child's location, other people on site. Margaret provided all the information. After receiving confirmation that the firefighters were on their way, Margaret tried once more to climb the stairs. But the situation had worsened drastically. Smoke was now descending to the first floor. It was possible to see an orange glow coming from the second floor. The flames had developed significantly. Margaret was forced to leave the house. She opened every door and window on the first floor that she could reach, hoping it would help. Then she went out to the street, shouting for help, alerting the neighbors. The neighbors came out of their houses when they heard the screams. Some men tried to go inside to help, but the fire was too strong. It would have been impossible and dangerous to try to reach the second floor without proper equipment. A neighbor offered water and a place to sit, but Margaret was too agitated to accept any comfort. She remained outside, staring at the burning house, desperately praying for the firefighters to arrive in time. The flames continued spreading through the second floor. The windows upstairs began to reveal the glow of the fire from within. Occasionally sparks and tongues of fire could be seen. Other neighbors gathered in the street, all watching in horror as the house was consumed. Finally, the sirens began to echo. Margaret felt a mixture of relief and terror. The firefighters were arriving, but would it be too late? The first truck to arrive was the unit commanded by Robert Hayes. When Robert got out and observed the scene, his experience told him immediately that it would be extremely challenging. The second floor was completely overtaken by flames. Dense smoke was pouring out of every upper window. Robert began to assess the situation technically. Based on the size of the flames and the amount of smoke for a 5-year-old child exposed to such conditions for so long, the chances of survival were extremely low, almost non-existent. Margaret ran to Robert as soon as she saw him. "Please, you have to save Lily. She's only 5 years old. She's in the front bedroom, second floor. I tried to get to her, but I couldn't." While speaking with Margaret, other team members were already preparing the equipment. The truck was positioned to provide the best access. The firefighters began readying the hoses to fight the flames and open a path. The team geared up quickly. Special heat-resistant clothing, oxygen masks, communication equipment, tools to break doors and clear a path. The entry was immediately challenging. The first floor was filled with thick smoke. The heat was intense, even with all the protective gear. Visibility was almost zero. The team had to rely mainly on touch and on the memory of the floor plan Margaret had described. Robert felt the weight of every step. His years of experience told him what he would find upstairs. And none of those years gave him any hope. The stairs to the second floor were structurally compromised but still usable. Each step groaned under the weight of the firefighters. Pieces of plaster and wood fell from the ceiling. Robert could feel sweat running down beneath his protective clothing. His breathing was fast. Not out of fear. He had faced worse situations, but because of the absolute certainty of what was about to come. As they climbed, the heat increased dramatically. Robert's instruments indicated temperatures above 600 degrees Fahrenheit at the top of the stairs. 600 degrees. No one survives that for more than a few minutes. Robert thought of his own daughter, Sarah, and for a brief moment he allowed himself to feel what that child's mother must have been feeling at that very instant. Absolute terror, desperation. He pushed those thoughts away. Emotion didn't save lives. Focus did. When they reached the top of the stairs, Morrison stopped abruptly. Through the dense smoke, it was possible to see the flames consuming the entire hallway. Tongues of fire danced along the walls. The ceiling had collapsed in several places. "Commander," Morrison's voice came over the radio, tense. "This is beyond the point of rescue. If she's been in there for half an hour under these conditions." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew what that meant. "I know," Robert replied. "But we're going to the bedroom." "Robert," Morrison insisted, using his first name, something rare during operations. "Look at this. The three of us could die trying to get there, and for what?" "To give the mother certainty," Robert cut in, his voice firm, "so she doesn't spend the rest of her life wondering if we could have done more." There was a moment of silence. Then Johnson, the third team member, spoke. "Let's go." They pushed forward. The floor was unstable. Beams had fallen, creating obstacles. It was impossible to see more than a few inches ahead. Lily's room was at the end of the hallway, at the front of the house. Every step toward it felt like an eternity. As they approached, Robert could see that the bedroom door had been destroyed, leaving the entrance completely open. The flames consuming the hallway flowed freely into the room. Robert stopped at the threshold. For a moment, just a brief moment, he hesitated. He took a deep breath, adjusted his mask, and stepped inside. The heat inside the room was even more intense. It was oppressive, suffocating, even with all the equipment. He pointed his flashlight into the interior of the room. The smoke was so dense that the beam barely penetrated a few inches. He moved forward 2 more steps, sweeping the light from side to side, searching for the girl. And what he saw left him utterly paralyzed. The room was devastated. The furniture was charred. The ceiling had partially collapsed. The walls were blackened by the fire. Lily's bed was nothing more than a twisted metal frame. It was a scene of total destruction, exactly what he had expected to find. But in the center of the room, there was something that defied any logical explanation. A circular area of approximately 2 meters in diameter was completely intact. The floor within this circle showed no signs of fire damage. And even more astonishing, a small child was sitting in the very middle of it, fully conscious and apparently unharmed. Lily was sitting on the floor wearing her unicorn pajamas, clean and intact. In her small hands, she was holding tightly onto a rosary. Her eyes were open and alert. Her hair was not even singed. Her skin showed no trace of exposure to the heat. And when she saw Robert approaching, she smiled, as if nothing extraordinary was happening. Robert froze for several seconds, trying to process what his eyes were witnessing. But he couldn't. It was impossible. Throughout his career, he had witnessed many unusual situations, but nothing that so clearly defied the laws of physics and human survival. For a moment, Robert thought he might be hallucinating. But then Lily spoke. "Hi," she said, her voice clear and calm, easily audible even through the roar of the flames around them. "The pretty lady said you were coming to get me." Robert approached carefully, still trying to understand how she could be alive and unharmed. He lifted her in his arms, quickly checking if she had suffered any injuries. Surprisingly, she showed no burns, no type of wound, nothing that would be expected in someone who had spent approximately 30 minutes under such extreme conditions. "Are you all right, dear?" Robert asked, his voice muffled by the mask. Lily nodded affirmatively, still holding the rosary. "The beautiful lady kept me safe," she repeated. "She said I didn't need to be afraid." Robert carried Lily out of the room, once again crossing the devastated hallway and descending the weakened stairs. Throughout the entire way, he kept Lily protected tightly against his body, but she remained calm, relaxed, as if she completely trusted that she was safe. When they got out of the house, the crowd of neighbors and paramedics that had gathered erupted in shouts of joy and disbelief. Margaret ran toward Robert, tears streaming down her face, and stretched out her arms to receive Lily. "Lily! Oh, my dear Lily!" Margaret cried, hugging the girl tightly. "I thought I had lost you. How did you manage to stay safe? What happened up there?" The paramedics immediately examined Lily. To the astonishment of all the medical professionals present, she showed no signs of smoke inhalation, burns, or any other health issue that would be expected after prolonged exposure to a fire. Her vital signs were completely normal. She seemed to be in perfect physical condition. While the paramedics continued the examination, Lily began telling her version of the events to Margaret and to anyone who wanted to listen. "When it started getting hot and smoky in my room, I got scared," she explained with the typical sincerity of a child. "But then a very beautiful lady appeared in my room." "What did this beautiful lady look like?" Margaret asked, intrigued. Lily thought for a moment, as if trying to find the right words. "She was very beautiful and wore a gorgeous blue dress," Lily continued. "And she had a bright light around her, like when the sun shines really strongly. She came to me and said, I didn't need to be afraid that she was going to protect me until the firefighters arrived. Margaret felt a shiver run down her spine as she listened to the description. As a devout Catholic, she immediately recognized the elements that corresponded to the traditional apparitions of the Virgin Mary: the blue dress, the heavenly light, the message of protection and comfort. "What else did the beautiful lady do?" Margaret asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Lily continued with the same natural simplicity. "She sat next to me and held my hand," Lily explained, "and she gave me this rosary. She said that as long as I held it, nothing bad would happen to me. So I held it very tightly, and she stayed with me the whole time. She sang a song very softly, and I wasn't afraid anymore." Margaret looked at the rosary in Lily's hands. It was the same rosary she had left on the bedside table, the rosary she used in her daily prayers. Margaret began to cry. They were not tears of sadness or fear, but of something deeper. A mixture of relief, gratitude, and awe in the face of something she could not explain rationally, but that touched the very core of her faith. Robert Hayes, still wearing his full gear, had listened to the entire conversation. His logical, trained mind tried to find a rational explanation. Perhaps the child had been in a state of shock. Perhaps she had hallucinated because of smoke exposure. Perhaps there was some physical explanation for the untouched area around her. But the more he thought about it, the less sense it made. The temperature in the room had been over 600 degrees. The oxygen had been almost completely depleted, and yet a 5-year-old child was sitting there, completely unharmed, in a perfectly circular area that seemed to have been somehow protected. The other firefighters who entered the room confirmed the same thing. There was a perfectly preserved circular area in the center of a completely destroyed bedroom. None of them had ever seen anything like it before. Jennifer was contacted at the hospital and informed about the fire. She left work immediately and arrived at the scene about 30 minutes later. When she saw Lily being examined by the paramedics, she ran and hugged her daughter tightly, crying uncontrollably. "My God, Lily, my baby, you're okay? How are you okay?" Lily hugged her mother back. "I'm fine, Mommy. The beautiful lady protected me." Jennifer looked at Margaret, searching for answers. Margaret simply showed the rosary in Lily's hands and shook her head, tears still streaming down her face. At the hospital, Lily underwent a full battery of tests: chest x-rays to check for lung damage, blood work, a complete neurological evaluation, a detailed physical exam of every inch of her body. All the tests came back completely normal. There was absolutely no physical evidence that Lily had ever been in a fire. Her lungs were clear. Her blood oxygen levels were perfect. There were no burns, not even superficial burns that would be expected from exposure to extreme heat. The doctor who examined her, Dr. Patterson, a professional with 25 years of experience in emergency medicine, was baffled. He called Jennifer and Margaret for a private conversation. "Mrs. Wilson, I don't know how to explain this. Based on the information I received about the severity of the fire and the length of time your daughter was exposed, she should have at least some degree of smoke inhalation. But there's nothing. It's as if she had never been anywhere near the fire." Jennifer looked at Margaret, who was still holding Lily's hand. "How is this possible?" Dr. Patterson shook his head. "I don't know. In my entire career, I've never seen anything like this. It's extraordinary." Meanwhile, the fire investigators had begun examining the remains of the Wilson house. The origin of the fire was determined to be the air conditioner in the second-floor hallway. An electrical failure in the system had caused a short circuit, which quickly spread through the walls and ceiling. But what truly puzzled the investigators was Lily's bedroom. Chief Investigator Thomas Reynolds spent hours examining that specific room. He took hundreds of photos, made precise measurements, and collected samples from the floor, the walls, from everything. The circular intact area in the center of the room measured exactly 2.1 meters in diameter. The floor within this area showed no signs of heat exposure. The carpet was untouched. There were no smoke marks, nothing. But just a few inches beyond that area, everything was completely destroyed. Thomas called in 2 other investigators to examine the site. They all reached the same conclusion. There was no logical explanation for what they were seeing. "This doesn't make sense," Thomas said to his colleagues. One of the other investigators suggested maybe there was something on the floor in that specific spot, some fire-resistant material. Thomas shook his head. "I checked. It was the same carpet as the rest of the room. Nothing special. And even if it were some fire-resistant material, it wouldn't explain the perfect preservation. There would at least be some discoloration, some minor damage. But there's nothing. It's as if the fire simply refused to enter that area." But for those directly involved that night, the technical analysis was secondary. What mattered was processing what they had witnessed. Robert Hayes returned home Wednesday morning after a shift that should have ended at 6 a.m., but stretched until 10. He entered quietly, hoping Linda and the children had already left for school and work. But Linda was in the kitchen, drinking coffee. She looked at her husband and immediately sensed something was different. In 18 years of marriage, she had seen Robert return from hundreds of calls. He always carried the same controlled professional expression. But that morning, there was something different in his eyes. "Something happened," Linda said. "It wasn't a question." Robert sat heavily at the kitchen table. For a long moment, he just stared at his own hands. Hands that had carried a child who, by all the laws of physics and biology, should not have been alive. "We had a rescue last night," he began slowly. "A 5-year-old girl trapped in a fire." Linda waited. She knew her husband well enough to know there was more. "When we arrived, the second floor was completely consumed by flames, temperatures above 600 degrees, toxic smoke. The child had been there for about 30 minutes. Robert paused, as if he were still trying to organize his thoughts. "She was sitting in the middle of the room, completely unharmed. Not a single burn, not a scratch, as if the fire simply couldn't touch her." Linda set her coffee cup on the table, her attention fully fixed on her husband. There was an area around her, perfectly circular, where nothing had been damaged. The rest of the room was destroyed, but that circle, with her at the center, was untouched, and she was holding a rosary. For the first time in all those years, Linda saw tears in her husband's eyes. "Linda, I don't know what I saw last night. My mind keeps trying to find a logical explanation, but there isn't one. There simply isn't." Linda stood up and embraced her husband. She said nothing about faith or miracles. She simply held him, letting him process the experience in his own time. After a long moment, Robert pulled back and looked at his wife. The girl said a beautiful woman in a blue dress protected her. She said she didn't need to be afraid. Linda felt a chill. As a practicing Catholic, she knew it was the Virgin Mary. "What do you think happened?" she asked gently. Robert shook his head. "I don't know. I truly don't know." Meanwhile, at the house of a friend where they were temporarily staying, Jennifer held Lily in her lap as the girl ate her breakfast. Everything they owned had been lost. But Jennifer couldn't bring herself to care about material possessions. Her daughter was alive. Against all odds, against all expectations, Lily was there, healthy and unharmed. Margaret had spent the night with them, refusing to leave Lily alone even for a moment. "Grandma Maggie," Lily said as she ate her pancakes, "do you want your rosary back?" Margaret looked at the object Lily had held tightly all night long. "No, sweetheart," Margaret replied softly. "I think it belongs to you now." Lily thought about it for a moment, then nodded and placed the rosary carefully beside her plate. Jennifer watched the interaction in silence. She had been raised in a Christian family, but had never been particularly religious. She went to church occasionally, mostly on holidays. She believed in God in an abstract way, but had no active practice of faith. But what had happened the night before was forcing her to reconsider many things. "Margaret," Jennifer said hesitantly, "do you really think it was what Lily said, the Virgin Mary?" Margaret looked at Jennifer for a long moment before answering. "Jennifer, I have gone to church every Sunday of my life. I have prayed 1,000 rosaries. I have read the Bible hundreds of times, and never, not once, have I witnessed anything I could call a miracle, until last night." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I don't know what happened in that room, but I know what should have happened, and yet she is here. So yes, I believe something extraordinary happened. I believe it was a miracle of the Virgin Mary." Jennifer nodded slowly, processing the words. By the end of the second week, Robert made a decision that surprised even himself. On Sunday morning, he woke up early and told Linda that he would go with the family to Mass. Linda looked at her husband with surprise and joy, but she had the wisdom not to make a big spectacle of it. She simply smiled and said, "The children will love it." Michael and Sarah were indeed surprised when their father announced that he would be joining them. During the Mass, Robert felt uncomfortable and out of place. He did not know when to stand, when to kneel, when to respond to the priest's words. But he remained, observing, trying to understand what all those people around him were finding there. After Mass, while the family had breakfast at a nearby diner, Sarah asked directly, "Dad, why did you decide to go to church today?" Robert considered lying, giving a vague answer, but he chose honesty instead. "Something happened at work 2 weeks ago, something that made me question many things." Michael, always the more serious of the two siblings, asked, "Was it that rescue, the one with the girl in the fire?" Robert nodded. "Yes." "How do you know about that?" "Everyone at school is talking about it. They say it was a miracle of the Virgin Mary." "And you, Michael? What do you think?" The teenager thought for a moment. "I think it would be arrogant of us to believe we understand everything about how the universe works. If something happened that we cannot explain, maybe it's because there are things beyond our comprehension." Robert smiled at his son, impressed by the maturity of the answer. 3 weeks after the fire, Jennifer finally found a suitable house to rent. It was smaller than the previous one, but comfortable and within her financial means. Margaret helped with the move, as did several people from the church whom Linda had mobilized when she learned of the situation. It was during this move that Robert and Jennifer finally met in person. Linda had organized for church members to help, and Robert decided to participate. "I never had the chance to thank you properly," Jennifer said, her voice emotional. "You saved my daughter." Robert shook his head. "I don't know if it was me who saved her. When we got to her, she was already protected in some way. I just carried her out." Jennifer took Robert's hand. "You went into that hell when any rational person would have said it was too late. You didn't give up. That means everything to me." As they spoke, Lily came running out of the new house, excited to show her room to Margaret. When she saw Robert, she stopped abruptly. For a moment it seemed she did not recognize him. After all, when she saw him for the first time, he had been wearing full firefighter gear. But then her eyes lit up. Lily ran and hugged Robert's legs with the full strength of a 5-year-old child. Robert knelt down to be at her eye level. "Hi, Lily. It's good to see you again." Lily smiled broadly. "Did you come to help us get the new house ready?" "I did," Robert replied, his voice gentle. Lily took him by the hand. "Come see my new room. Mommy let me choose the color of the walls. I picked pink, just like my old room." Robert walked closer and noticed the rosary beside the bed. It was simple, but he knew what that object represented. Lily was holding something in her hands. When Robert knelt down, she stretched out a drawing to him. It was made with crayons. It showed a house on fire, a firefighter, and a little girl. Above the girl there was a woman wearing a blue dress and surrounded by golden light. "I drew what happened," Lily explained, "so you'll never forget." Robert took the drawing with trembling hands. "I will never forget, Lily." Never. Lily smiled and hugged him. The beautiful lady blessed you too, you know, she told me. Robert felt tears burning in his eyes. Jennifer placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder. Let's let Robert get back to work, sweetheart. That night he took the drawing home and placed it in a frame. He would hang it in his office where he could see it every day. A reminder that on that night of November 15th, he had witnessed something extraordinary, something that changed everything. Today, 5 years later, Lily is a bright girl, full of life, who loves to draw and sing. The rosary is still beside her bed. She does not sleep without it nearby. Jennifer never married again, but she found a strong community in the church that supported her through the hard times. And Robert? Robert still serves as a firefighter. He is still known for his competence. But now, every Sunday, he is in church with his family. This story continues to be a testimony that the Virgin Mary keeps interceding, protecting, and showing us that we are not alone in the storms of life. And you? Have you ever experienced a miracle in your life? Have you ever felt the protection of the Virgin Mary in moments of danger or affliction? Share your experience in the comments, because each testimony is a flame that strengthens the faith of us all. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel. Activate the notification bell to receive more stories of miracles of Our Lady, and share this video with someone who needs to renew their hope today. May the Virgin Mary continue blessing and protecting you and your family. Amen.